Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. Hi, Gauri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Finally, we do this.
Yes, you've been on my list of people to get on the show for a while, and I was, uh, and I always say this that whenever we have new podcast hosts and also guess who you want, that those forces align, then you definitely have to get them on the podcast soon enough, because then it's a lot more fun, because we can go into the what all podcast hosts do. We go into tangents, and we'll find different things to kind of talk about.
I know. The other day, I got asked to be like I was a someone else had to sort of I was a guinea pig on someone else's show when I was starting out, and then the other day, someone said, I think Kavita asked me to to do a pilot for someone else, and I was like, oh, does that mean I've kind of like arrived
Yeah.
when you get asked to do a pilot for someone? So yeah, but no, good to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yep. One of the things when I first thought about what I would kind of talk to you about one of the first things I thought I'll talk to you about is not just how the business of hospitality is kind of evolved, but really about the two sides to it. Right? One is how the industries evolved, but also how the consumers really evolved, like how people's relationship with food, how they go and eat, even like outdoors, how they order in, everything's kind of changed, right? So if you kind of look at it from a slightly macro perspective, what have you seen as when you look at it as a business? What are the things that you kind of shifted as a focus, or kind of tweaked around?
So it's that's actually really interesting because we just finished 10 years, and I feel that over that span, I've seen a huge shift in the way people consume food. When we started out back in 2011 with the table, the way it was received was very mixed. People were like, so what is the cuisine? And we were like, it's not, it's kind of cuisine agnostic. It's, an ingredient driven menu. And they were like, what's that? Like, so is this just Italian? And I was like, no, it's not Italian because there's one pasta on the menu. And, there was this sort of desperate need to sort of pigeonhole it into a category that they knew and were familiar with. And us sort of pushing the boundaries on that was making people a little uncomfortable. Today, it's completely different. People are a lot more adventurous. They want that innovation. They want to see sort of a constantly evolving menu, and they're just open to trying new things. So for us, it's what was the tricky thing in this whole journey, I guess, was sticking to our guns about what we wanted to do and not pandering to what the consumer wanted or felt more comfortable with. So, and then of course, another big part of this has been, with the introduction of shows like MasterChef and things, people are so much
Yeah.
more into cooking. And of course, the pandemic just, lockdown kind of escalated that to a whole new level. It even got me into the kitchen, which is saying a lot. And so there's just this growing interest in food, in ingredients. People are just more interested in, the provenance of things. And I think obviously when you're cooking yourself, you appreciate food very differently. So yeah, I'm really glad with the direction it's going in, for sure.
You mentioned MasterChef, and that's interesting, right? I feel that MasterChef has singularly taught people, if not in any form of depth, um, at least at a superficial level, people know what to kind of say. And I think that at some point depth comes in, because I mean, you've learned terms, you learn things about food, and like fine dining in my mind, or actually all cuisines, that makes you look at it different. I feel that people look at food differently. They look at it. I've
Yeah.
seen how people like kind of like take a spoon, and I'm like, okay, I know where you learned that from.
No, you're absolutely right. They took away a lot of the hard work for us, and I think that's it's just great because the fact is that there is interest in this, and it just makes it a lot easier for us to do to push the envelope a bit.
You mentioned how it was when you started off versus now, right? I think one of the things is that when you said you're not a specific cuisine, I'm sure at some point somebody must have said, "Are you a multi-cuisine restaurant?" Which is what the term was, right? You're Indian, you're Chinese, you're multi-cuisine. And yes, there's dogs barking in the background. And there was those terms that you would use, but I feel that took away from what I think. a restaurant kind of brings something to the table. To I mean, this is not a that those words have not been added in a sentence by plan. Now,
You're not the
it brings
first
some.
one. It's fine, Varun. I forgive you.
Yeah, which is basically that there's an idea of the kind of mix of food you want to give people to give them an experience, and I think we don't use the word experience enough around food, although we are a lot more now, but it's an experience, right? Just the space you walk into, the mixture of foods you get, just like how everything is around it, what you pair it with, if you drink alcohol, obviously what you kind of drink it with, etc. So, how much time did it take for people to kind of accept that, kind of evolve into that space, and obviously with the booster of um, MasterChef, but even otherwise, I mean, were there things that you had to kind of do to push early adopters in and kind of get them to understand what this was like?
So I'll give you an example. We have one of our sort of top selling dishes. The pretty much the only ingredient in that is zucchini. Right now, it's not something that the first thing that you'll pick on a menu when you see it, right? Or for example, we have a beetroot, or we had a beetroot risotto. Now, beetroot's again not everyone's favorite vegetable, but we really had to just tell people in the beginning. They were like, they'd get the zucchini spaghetti and be like, but where's the spaghetti? And we'd be like, it's zucchini spaghetti, as in it's with the zucchini, right? So, or even wouldn't even like think of ordering it. They felt like, it wasn't familiar enough. And we really just had to say to people, just try it. If you don't like it, it's on us. Don't worry about it. And we really just had to say, just try it. I mean, and that was where I remember being on the floor like the first few months of the restaurant opening, and literally, I mean, of course I knew people and they were like a little bit more willing to take a chance if I said things. But imagine like servers just saying like, just try the zucchini spaghetti, and so that was how we did it, honestly, because we didn't know better. I mean, it was our first foray into hospitality, so literally all we could say is, take our word for it and give it a shot, and as we did that, the sort of response was obviously what we thought it would be, and people did enjoy it. But that little bit of booster, like, even we have this dish called the boneless chicken wings, right? And there are it's boneless, so I mean, everyone's used to having chicken wings on the bone, and they come in these little cubes, and it's slightly sweet. So everything about that dish was just throwing people off. And but it's been on our menu since the day we opened, and we can't even think of taking it off, because it's, again, one of the most popular dishes on the menu. So it was just really about like gently urging people to take a punt on the menu, and I think it paid off. But having said that, it didn't happen, it wasn't all sort of hunky-dory overnight. It took, I would say, about 3 years before I finally started seeing us being considered, like a landmark restaurant, and that, people, even sort of internationally, we were kind of getting recognition. And that took a good 3 years of, standing by our vision for the restaurant, and not sort of caving to criticism, or even, and not just in terms of the food itself, but also the price point, right? We were considered a very expensive restaurant. I mean, it is a premium restaurant, and it came with the territory of using high quality ingredients, which is what the whole philosophy was, right? So we were like, I mean, it's just something we can't compromise on, and it comes at a price. And we really, and I think that that's one of the reasons we're still around today. And it's just something that every review we got on like TripAdvisor or anywhere, it would always say like, great experience, great menu, but expensive, or but and I was just, but today I think people are just more accepting of it. There isn't this whole dichotomy of saying, oh, in India, why should I pay this, but I'll pay that abroad. And we used to get a lot of that. People who'd be willing to pay sort of top dollar for something just because it was being served. Hey, it's like real estate ain't cheap here either. So there's no real logic to it needing to be that much cheaper in India versus abroad. And And I think that that perspective is changing, and people perceiving value in things like the quality of ingredients, and the sort of level of service, and things like that, and appreciating that it does come at a certain price. So I'm really glad that it's changing, or it's changed for the better in that sense.
Yeah, you mentioned ingredients, right? And I think that's actually something which I've seen people talk about a lot more in recent times than I ever heard them speak. My favorite joke when someone saying ingredients is speak about an uncle of mine who would walk into someone's house and say, "Is the chicken fresh?" Okay, and we would always wonder, like, he would say, is the chicken fresh and is the ice cold? And I never understood both. Like, I was like, what do you mean chicken is fresh? I mean, they just haven't like gotten it fresh off. Like, is the ice cold is a whole different connotation. But except for that, I never heard people talk about, okay, how long. I mean, from where is it kind of coming? And there's so many different elements to just like produce, right? I think that word produce is something again you heard again going back to MasterChef. I would not have used that word before that show, but there is something about that coming in that's making food a larger part of the conversation we're having about just not just how we eat, but about how the world kind of works. And I know that you believe in that as a philosophy, right? I'd love for you to kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, a growing sort of, I don't want to say trend, because by definition that sounds like it's short-lived, but I think that people are definitely more concerned and curious about the provenance of, what's going on their plate. And we kind of stumbled on it a little accidentally, where we were growing, produce at our farm in Alibag, which is literally a quick boat ride from the gateway where our restaurant is. And we sort of, over the sort of over a period, we were actually just growing this for personal consumption, and it's really funny. One thing that grows so well in Alibag is spinach for some reason. Had tons
Wow.
of it one time. I'd given it to literally everyone I knew, and there was still a lot left over. So on my way back from Alibag one weekend, I just dropped it off at the table and at the kitchen, and I said, "Here, guys, like have fun." And then the next day, the chefs were just like, "Hey, where did you get that from? Like, can we get more of it?" And that's kind of when the penny dropped, and I was like, I know. I mean, I'm so silly. Like, I've been growing it and eating it, for myself, but why not do this on a slightly larger scale for the restaurant? And that's when I brought on board Adrian Thadani. She's an urban farming consultant, and because I had no idea how to go about this, it's a whole different. It's not just like, oh, let me just plant a few seeds and then harvest it and bring it to the restaurant. There's a whole plan that goes behind it, and so we started doing that. It took us 2 years from the time that we decided to do it for the restaurant to actually being able to deliver to the restaurant. And there's, a variety of reasons for that, including changing the soil and, all of that. But the funny thing is, so a lot, this was sort of around 2012, 2013. And this whole idea of farm to table was being bandied around a lot.
Yeah.
And you know I was like, well, okay, everything does come from some farm, but that's not really what the concept's about, right? It's not that it's come from a farm to my restaurant and that's why I'm a farm to table restaurant. It's actually about knowing what's going into that produce, right from the seed, the soil, the growing process, to the harvesting, to it
Yeah.
finally coming into the kitchen. And we were like, well, we're actually doing it, but we were just doing this quietly because that's and I remember this was, I think, in 2014 when we took the first group of 10 people. I said, hey, look, we're doing this. Why are we not talking about this a little more? And so we took a group of 10 people out in about March sometime. It was starting to get a bit hot, and got them involved with the farming process, like making beds, digging soil, mixing cow dung in the red soil, and whatnot. And then we also took our chefs along to cook up this amazing lunch with whatever was available at the time on the farm. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I suddenly got this flurry of messages from people saying, we want to come to the next one. And I was like, what next one? That was supposed to be like a one-off, just, for fun. But then I realized that, people want to know more about this. They are curious. And also they're just looking to get out of the city. So we started doing this, every year, where we take groups out. And I can't tell you, how much, firstly, how many like really sort of fun people I've met spending a day on the farm with them. But also, there's so much, there's such a big need for information about how to go about this. A lot of people want to do it, whether it's in their balcony or whether it's because they've got some like land somewhere and it's just lying there and they don't know how to, where to start. So I think, and it's just, and then there are people who just love food and,
Yeah.
have an interest in where things are coming from. And so it's just great. It's great to be able to showcase this. And of course, while we can't, cater to 100% of the restaurant's requirement from that, small sort of farm that we have, whatever can come makes such a difference. And
Yeah.
I'm just excited to be able to do it. And of course, now, the whole ecosystem has just widened. There are so many more people who are pushing, going direct to farmers, and there's just more awareness about. I mean, I literally every day I get some WhatsApp about, an organic farm that's
Yeah.
supplying XYZ thing. And so I think it's great that, this is the direction we're going in. Organic, yes, it is considered a premium. It comes at a premium, but the again, like with what I was explaining about, the perception of value in good quality ingredients, I think that people are realizing that even when it comes to just buying ingredients for, or buying, produce for their home
Yeah.
cooking. And they're willing to, they understand that there's no price you can put on your health.
Yeah.
And it's great for, farmers. Of course, we're a long way away from it being an organized sort of
Of course.
sector, but in that sense, I think it's just it's the right direction for sure.
It's also, I think, interesting that, like, I know that my daughter Leah had this school project to plant something, right? And so we just basically bought a bunch of seeds and just set it up in we had one tiny balcony, we just set it up. And I can see her going back to it and checking on how it's growing. I think that's a great thing to
I
do
do
with
that,
kids.
by the way. So it's
Yeah.
not a kid's thing. Trust me. I literally every weekend when
Do you
or
talk to your
whenever.
plants as well?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, you're gonna laugh about this, but
No,
ever
no.
since we
I have two people at home who talk to
Okay,
plants,
okay,
so I'm
so
like,
fine. Yeah, I don't so much talk to them, but I have seen that when we started doing more on the farm, um, there were there were like bushes and trees and things which hadn't flowered for a few years, and then they randomly started flowering. And I know this sounds crazy, but it's not. It's so I don't know the science behind it,
I
but
think there is a science behind it that actually it does help. Is there what
yeah.
I've read?
But I kid you not, the when you see something growing like week on week, the thrill that you get from it is it's unmatched. It's really and then to like pluck it and eat it and cook with it. I mean, I there are a few things that get me more excited. So and this is when I can't even cook. So yeah.
Speaking of growing week on week, right? Obviously, with a fine line focus to move towards delivery, like you would have had to in the last, let's say, year or, um, has how has that been? I mean, just it's not necessarily a shift in direction, but it's an evolution of how people are, just like how they're getting food
Consuming
and
food, yeah.
consuming food and stuff like that. So, from a general business perspective, has there been have you had to change some levels of focuses? Have you had to rethink some pieces?
So, one interesting thing is that for us, whether food was going in a delivery format or being consumed, sitting in the restaurant, the philosophy has been exactly the same, which is use the highest quality ingredients and zero compromise on quality. And I think that's the one thing that we know how to do, and so for us, converting it into a delivery format was not uh, so different from what we were doing in the restaurant. Of course, the experience is very different, and but it's also a different thought process because when you come to a restaurant, like you mentioned earlier, it's very experience driven.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ordering in, it's comfort food. That's what you
Correct.
want. You're not looking for like a, sort of exquisitely plated plate. You just want something that's,
Yeah.
homely and makes you feel good, right? So it's a different thought process. It's not like we can just say, oh, we're in the middle of a lockdown, the restaurant's closed, let's just convert our entire restaurant menu into a delivery menu. It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. So you do have to think about it differently. But incidentally, we actually launched Iktara, which is our Indian delivery menu,
Yeah.
3 weeks before lockdown. And so it wasn't in preparation for lockdown, but the timing was great. And we did launch pizzas during lockdown, or sort of a few months ago. And it's something we'd been thinking about doing. And then we were like, if we don't get off our bums now and do it, there's no
Yeah.
no sort of better time. And yeah, and again, hey, we're not the first pizza delivery brand. So why us over anybody else? And for us, it was just about, we know the ingredients that are going on the pizza. We know what we miss when we order pizza elsewhere, where
Yeah.
we feel like, hey, they're being a little cheap on the mushrooms. They're being a little
Mm.
like, sort of, and there are like a lot of better mushrooms out there that you can put on the pizza. Like, why only button mushrooms? And so, there are things like that. That's basically the fact that we had no hospitality background has the one thing that it's, held in good stead for us is that every decision we've made is pretty much driven by what we want. We're just like, this is what we miss on a pizza, this is what we miss in a fine dining experience, this is what we're missing, when it comes to bakery products. So create it, and that's as simple as it is. There's no secret sort of recipe or way of
No, no
operating
secret
that's
sauce to
different.
it.
There isn't, I can tell you that for nothing. So yeah, I and so yes, I mean, of course there are differences when you operate delivery and in dining, but I think if your core philosophy is the same, you should be good.
Uh, when you also have to evolve this, I mean, while the essence is the same, but you also have to kind of evolve how you send. And I like the fact that you said you can't have the same menu because any friend of mine I spoke to who's in the food business said that food travels very differently. And I never understood that term and what that meant till I actually spoke to a few of them. And I was okay, now I understand. Is that when you order it, you get it fresh and it's hot and whichever temperature it has to be, but you kind of, once you transport it, you might get something which is amazing in a restaurant, but just looks like the most unappetizing thing you can ever eat when you get delivery. And I've gotten some of those over the last year when it just comes from a restaurant you really like and you're like, I can't eat this. It just doesn't look like I want to eat it. How much of a consideration is that in terms of how you kind of built the menu out? And if somebody has, let's say, a hospitality business and they want to understand how they can kind of plan keeping that in mind, especially because delivery is now such a large part of what I think we'll have for the future.
Yeah.
What should they kind of keep in mind?
No, I think firstly acknowledge that it's not going to be the same as dining in, as a restaurateur, right? So firstly recognize that it's, if your primary focus is about ensuring a great experience for the diner, whether they're in your restaurant or at home, then if you put yourself in their shoes, it pretty much answers a lot of the questions. The problem starts happening when you are running after the bucks, right? When you're saying, okay, I need to be hitting like this target, and so take whatever delivery orders you can, whichever part
Yeah.
of Bombay it's coming from, and just do it, because
Yeah.
that's it's. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. We during lockdown started delivering to Alibag because I'd moved there and I realized that there was nothing there. And it was very easy to get to. It was an hour on a boat, and and our product traveled enough to, some of our products traveled enough to be fine when delivered across the bay. So we started doing this, and everyone said, oh, but why are you not delivering the table? And we were like, because it doesn't travel well that distance. And I had like literally, I mean, now not so much because everyone's got the message, but in the beginning, I had so many people, they were like, it's fine, we'll just take it, don't
We'll
worry
heat
about
it
that.
up.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm okay with however it comes. And I'm like, I'm not, and I think that that's where you really have to um, exercise some restraint on not compromising something that you've built goodwill with, just because you're in the dire straits and you need every penny coming through the door. So I think that is really critical, that if you stay true to what you stand for, then people really respect that. And the other thing is that I mean, another example I can give you is like we launched Toppings, our pizza brand, and I know that it's not going to be as hot as when it just came out of the oven, right? So we actually give reheating instructions on the box. We're like, and it says clearly there, reheat before you eat. And I'll still get messages saying it came to me cold or it wasn't hot. And I'm like, yes, I know. And that's
Read.
why reheat before you eat. So I'm like, I can't spell this out any more than, than
But
putting
can I
it
tell
right
you,
on
I'm
the,
guilty of this. Not for for a friend of mine runs a dessert delivery thing, and I keep ordering from her. And she sends something, I'm eating it, right? And I'm a person who's terrible with temperature because I will eat cold food. I have no issues with it in
are you
most
one of
times.
those cold pizza guys? Okay.
No, I like dal chawal I'll have which is like less than room temperature many times, and I've been told like, can you just heat it up? And I'm like, it's okay. I'm that person. Although I enjoy like really good food, so it's one of those. I think in my head I'm thinking of something else when I'm eating, and I'm eating it and I'm loving it. And she's like, she messaged me because she knows me, and she said, did you heat it up? And I'm like, oh, I was supposed to heat it up. She's like, read the box.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I heated it up and it tasted much better, but it
No,
was still
but
yum
the
without heating
the,
it up.
the point is that I think you have to recognize the limitations that come with delivery, and
Yeah.
then do your best to sort of fulfill those in whatever way you can. So I think that's the key when it comes to delivery, is that yes, very few brands, and we did this, right? We ordered, I think, 10 different margarita pizzas from 10 brands when we were doing this, when we were doing a little bit of a market, I guess,
Research.
research. And firstly, they were all completely different, but no one had these reheating instructions, right? So we were just like, it seems a little obvious, and then you don't want someone putting it in the microwave and it tasting even worse than before they put it in the
What, you don't put
microwave.
pizza in the microwave?
Yeah. You gotta read
Oh man.
yeah, exactly. You
Oh
learn
no.
something new every day,
What have I
Varun.
been doing?
Yeah.
No,
But
but
so
actually,
that's
other
what I
than
mean,
pizza, I
that
have to ask you a question, and this is
yeah.
a question. Actually, no, I'll do that question in the end because I think that's going to be a very fun question to ask.
Am I
I'll
gonna
come to
hang
that.
up on you? Is that why?
No, 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 no. I'm gonna ask that in the end, but we'll continue with what you're saying about reheating.
Yeah, no, I was just saying. And then the other thing we did was, I don't know if you've seen our boxes, but they're pink, and everyone was like, "Why would you do pink?" Right? It's it like people will think it's dessert, and I'm like, well, I don't care. Like, where because all the boxes we got were like red, black, and brown,
Yeah,
and so we decided to go pink, and it's just become a thing. So I think that
yeah, it stands out.
you have to have like fun. You have to think from a consumer's perspective as much as standing to what you want to do here. And yeah, and it's not that difficult really, but
Yeah.
it's about being driven by the right principles, I guess. And the one time, I'll tell you this, the one time we didn't do that and we were driven by numbers is when we actually weren't successful. So I really strongly believe in sort of sticking to your vision.
Yeah. One large part of being in this business isn't just the customer or the consumer, right? It's also the team, and one big chunk of that team is a creative team because chefs and people working with food are generally creative, and it's not just one or two; it's that entire bunch and people around it. Um, how if you had to kind of pick out and say what have your learnings been kind of working with that side of the chain, and I know for you it is I have a similar relationship because Pooja and I run our business together, and but I want to kind of get from you as in how if I was in this business, What are your watch outs? What is the stuff you kind of learned and stuff like that?
So one thing I learned is that they're equal parts creative and crazy. So you gotta be prepared for that. But I mean, no, jokes apart, I think with any business, not just our industry, it's like that Silicon Valley model, right? You have a CTO, a CMO, and a CEO, right? And it's or a CFO, and it's something similar here. That of course, you need that creative. Part of the equation, and that's sort of driving the product, but you also they very often don't have business sense, and so you need that counterpart to drive the business aspect of it. And even between Jay and me, Jay is my husband, and he's the entrepreneur who's basically got no sort of risk threshold whatsoever. And I'm the ex auditor, accountant, turned restaurateur who is completely risk averse and is the worst devil's advocate when it comes to him and all his ideas. And I completely bash them, but you need that, right? So
Yeah.
eventually, yes, we ended up opening a restaurant and various businesses after that. But you needed that. It's not just about being an entrepreneur or just about being a chef or just
Yeah.
the numbers person. And I think that the whole thing has to work sort of in sync for something to be successful.
So if I was a professional who kind of wants to work in the space, and I'm not working on the actual creation of the food itself, what would be stuff that I should keep in mind as to like what do I need to know about it? What are stuff which I'm told before I enter the business, which is totally untrue, and what should I really know to kind of do well?
I think, first of all, a lot of people get into this business because they think it's very glamorous, and you get to just eat good food
That
all
happens in
day.
all of these businesses, no? Like if people want to work in advertising and want to work in like video because it's glamorous. It's the least glamorous businesses.
Exactly. It's really not that glamorous at all. That's the face of it, and it's maybe like 5% of the of what it involves. But I think, firstly, definitely work somewhere else if you get the opportunity before diving into something like this, so you really do get to see the behind the scenes and not just the supposed glamour. But like I said, there's so many aspects to running a business like ours, right? There's the finance part of it, there's marketing, there's obviously the creative chef part of it, there's a lot of dealing with bureaucracy. That's a big part of our business, and then just overall maintenance and operations, right? So not everything is everyone's cup of tea. Like
Yeah,
I don't get involved in the maintenance and operations part of it. Like my strength lies in PR, marketing, accounts, obviously.
yeah,
Everyone else in my sort of in the management runs away from Excel spreadsheets. I'm like the only one who actually like opens them ever. And so you need that. So really, it's not you're not gonna be doing everything. So figure out what is your area of interest, and of course you should know about the other aspects, just so that you're not completely dependent and unaware. I think that, and I say this to a lot of people who hate accounts, hate maths, hate dealing with the numbers. I'm like, yeah, but you should be able to know enough to question somebody
yeah,
if it's your
yeah.
own business, even if you don't sit there and do the accounts every day. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it
Um,
does.
but yeah, I think figure out, and you're going to be spending a lot of hours every day doing this. So
Yeah.
just figure out which area works for you and make sure you have um, the right team to support you on the rest, because you can't do everything.
When you mentioned the pink box, I was thinking about how that's a very interesting way to market, differentiate yourself from a marketing perspective as well. Is that it's very quintessentially, um, it's quintessentially you because it doesn't look like there are. You're right. The most pizza boxes are either white or red. I have only seen those two. I don't
Or
remember the
brown,
black.
or maybe like with a touch of black. Yeah.
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 Um, from a marketing perspective, what have you kind of seen as just kind of changes you've made to how you market, not just the restaurant business, right? But because there are multiple businesses, so how what have you seen as, especially for this specific side of business? Because I feel that you've seen so much. I hate the word disruption; it's overused, but it's seen so much disruption over the last couple of years.
You mean for the pizza business specifically?
Not pizza in general,
Yeah.
the food business rather, hospitality.
Okay, so I'll be really honest, and I think that for a lot of things, I'm not the benchmark for what's happening in the industry. And one thing that I've learned very early on was that I really kind of know or follow what's happening around me. And
Yeah.
what we kind of just put our heads down and do what we want to do. And that's something that I often get asked this question, right? Like, what are the trends for the year, and like, what's and I'm like, I have no idea. And
Yeah.
I'm not so interested either, because I just feel that, like I said earlier, trends are sort of fleeting in nature, and we're here for the
True.
long haul, right? So when it comes to our approach to doing things, and I'm not saying we get it right every time or it's the best way or anything, but it's really just, it's
It's authentic.
it's
It's what you are.
authentic. And again, like, I was trying to look for a different word, because I think that that's
That
been a
word's used a
little
lot. Yeah.
overused as well, but
Yeah.
it is that. And we often get asked, like, oh, who does your marketing? And I'm like, we do it. I couldn't possibly think, and this might sort of sound counter to your business, but I feel that nobody knows our brand, our product, our sort of story better than ourselves. And I can't outsource that. I can't
Yeah.
outsource that storytelling to someone. I've tried, just because I wanted to kind of be sure of this before making a statement like that. And it's only reinforced my belief. So it is hard work, and but it's, you don't have to do it to someone else's timetable. You do it to what works for you. And there are a
Yeah.
lot more things that I'd like to do, when it comes to sort of talking about our brands and the kind of things we want to do. And yeah, and sometimes I'm limited by time, resource, etc. But you do the best you can. But at the end of the day, you also, the strongest thing for us, like, in anything that we've done, has been word of mouth. And no amount of, like, paid marketing or videos or pictures
Yeah.
can create that, right? So if the product, is speaks for itself, um you're kind of halfway there.
You know, what I really liked about what you just said is the fact that to I know we shouldn't use the word authentic twice, but that's so relevant for how I feel any brand should kind of put themselves out there. What is essentially you is how you're putting it out there, and in many cases, it actually makes sense to do it yourself if you can, because it keeps it so close to the vision
Yeah.
of the product itself. And also some of the elements were just like word of mouth, right? Again, similar things, like it just, these things you can't buy, you only get them because you're giving true value. So many aspects of what you're saying is very interesting to look at, primarily because a lot of brands don't look at that closely enough. You do a spray and pray. I'm throwing all the cliche terms out here, and you
I
say, okay,
haven't
let's
heard
put an,
that one before.
so spray and pray basically is this, right? If you have a 50, let's put as many hoardings across the city or as
Ah,
many ads across, and then you're praying that enough people see it and they'll come to you buy your product. Versus saying, okay, this is exactly my audience. This is how they will connect to my vision, and really focusing on that is the other way. But and totally agree with the philosophy you just spoke of, because I think that is essentially how we should all put ourselves out, especially as brands in this world today.
yeah, and I also feel that, you can't please everyone. So firstly, and I tried doing that. This is something I learned on the job, right? So when we first opened the restaurant, if we got like one, like, negative feedback or, like, bad review, I couldn't sleep for days. I would be like, but why did that happen? What do we need to do to, like, not make that happen again? and and then it took me a while to realize that you can't please everyone, and that's not an excuse for, you know, being okay with sort of negative feedback. It's just, it's a realization that you know, helped me focus on us doing what we wanted to do, and then just believing that there'll be enough others who think the same way, even if that's not the entire sort of city, or, you know, the entire audience. It's, there's that you got to figure out who, you know, who you are catering to, and sort of work on them and not on everyone.
Speaking of feedback, how is that seeped over to you being a podcast host? Because feedback is our life
People have
in
been
many
quite
ways.
nice, I have to say. I think I'm a newbie. You're more of a veteran than me. So but yeah, it's been it's, I think that's probably why I'm enjoying it, is because it's this great like morale booster when there's shit going down at work, right? I'm just like, oh, that was a nice message from, for once after a long time. No, so I think it's the one thing that's going right. And of course I always have Kavita there to bring me sort of back down to earth.
Yeah.
But no, it's been an amazing ride so far. And I've, yeah, I mean, I've definitely learned what I haven't been doing right and worked on it, and it's I think getting better, and I'm enjoying it.
Um, how did the idea for this particular one kind of come about? Um, I've heard the earlier one, but I just thought, how did this one kind of come about?
I don't even know. It's so we were, you know, we've been talking about doing something for years, and the obvious subject was F&B. But I just wasn't feeling it, you know, and there wasn't, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be just interviewing like different entrepreneurs and different products, and you know, so it wasn't exciting me. And then during lockdown, when all our lives kind of revolved around IG lives and webinars
Yeah.
and whatnot, I started sort of realizing that so many people in every industry were kind of just going through the same thing as us. You know, everyone was like, "Oh, restaurants are worse hit," and this, that, but it wasn't as sort of simple as that. And that's when I sort of started thinking that why not talk to people outside of my industry and try and sort of see, you know, how we can um console each other at that time. But you know, also just talk about, you know, how they've dealt with things, and how they've you know, and it's something, you know, we like, people feel face criticism and negative reviews in the movie industry as much as they do in you know, the restaurant industry, right? So how do they deal with it? And you know, maybe there's something in there for me to learn. And that's kind of how it wasn't anything you know, more intelligent than that. And also just to get a perspective on where the world was heading. Because while I might be from, you know, the F&B industry, I, you know, my life sort of goes beyond that, and
Of
I'm
course.
affected by so many things happening around me. So whether it was sort of out of personal curiosity, or you know, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of what the driver for the conversation was. But it's not just about like life pre and post COVID. I mean, you know, I just wanted to, I've the one amazing thing about this business has been that I've met so many
Yeah.
really cool people that have such a lot to share. And you know, I was just like, hey, let's put it out there for a larger audience. And yeah, I mean, you know what it is. It's
Yeah.
sort of
I call
exactly
it
what
my
you
weekly
do.
therapy session.
Yeah,
That's what I call it. I said
exactly.
that every recording is like a therapy session. You can just like, there's some stories you throw out there which you haven't thrown out yourself.
Yeah.
My I hope my uncle is not listening, but I spoke about the ice and the chicken, but apart from that, I think there's always stuff which you throw out there which you also enjoy doing. Um, but I think it's also about, like, you're right, you it also kind of leaves you with stuff to think about yourself. And also kind of feeds back to what you do if you call it a day job in that sense. Has there been stuff that you've taken from the podcast which kind of
Yeah.
changes your mindset in terms of how you do your day job?
Absolutely. I mean, all the time. And, like the other day I was talking to Divya Ravichandran from who founded Scrap,
Yeah.
which is a waste management company. And so she was she was saying things, and I was just like, I did not know that. I am going to sort of do things differently now. And really easy stuff. This is not sort of like, uh, like high level intellectual stuff. This is really like easy
Yeah.
things to implement. And
Yeah.
yeah, so there's been so much of that. I mean, and just really interesting people, like whom not everyone is someone I've known previously. And yeah, and basically it takes me away from work for a few hours every week,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
which is definitely needed.
As you come towards the end of every episode, I do a set of random questions. Most of them are the same, and I'm going to add one in. Like I said, I'll come to one question towards the end, which I think is a classic question around pizza. But I'll come to that. Apart from obviously podcasting, the business, etc., is there something that you really enjoy consuming, that you enjoy, that you like to spend a lot of time doing, that people don't necessarily know about?
I don't know. My life's pretty an open book. I can't say traveling because I haven't done that for the last year, although I'm going on holiday tomorrow and I cannot wait. No, I don't think I get asked this, like, and I feel like, oh, I should have this like amazing
It can
hobby
be
that I
as
do.
it can be the randomest thing possible is how I'll throw it. I've realized that it doesn't have to be something really large. It can be something really like,
What, that people don't know about me? Oh God, I don't know.
what is your for lack of a this thing? What is your thing that you do when you want to just get away from? I think it's podcasting now, but get away from work. What was your thing to do?
I wish I could get away from work more often. What did I do? Uh, I
Could
don't
be travel
know.
maybe
Yeah, I mean, it was
because you mentioned.
travel. I love watching shows, but I think, hey, everyone does. That's my like one thing. And I love watching reruns. I just started watching 24 all over again. And I have
Oh
no
wow, I
idea
love that
why,
show.
because it's like 20 years old. I mean, like they have those like old like flip open phones and stuff. And I'm like, this is
But can I be
really,
honest? That's a show that I think I
yeah,
can't
but then
binge anymore. I've gone beyond binging. But that show, I remember watching it 20 hours at one shot.
yeah, of course, we've all done that. But I almost came close to doing that again recently. And it's like even when I'm like really tired and falling asleep, I just like watch a couple of episodes every night. So it's this very weird thing, which even Jay is like, can we please watch something else? And I'm like, no,
But I think
bro,
reruns are
I'm
like
gonna
that, right?
like
Reruns are
watch all
comfort food.
10 seasons again, or however many
No, no,
seasons. So
I
I'm
can't
still
do that. I've done like two
no.
seasons, I remember.
Yeah, no, I'm like weirdly addicted to it right now. So there's something you didn't know.
I think reruns are like comfort food, right? You go back to some
Yeah,
shows just because, like, or movies.
yeah. I know exactly what's gonna happen, but I still want to watch it again.
Um, what can you put together in an instant?
A cocktail. Eggs. That's the only thing I'm really proud of when that comes out of the kitchen. So yeah.
Are you for pineapples on pizza? That is my question, which I was going to ask you.
That is a big no with a capital N and a capital O. No, no, no.
I'm one of the minority who actually finds that fun, right? I won't have it all the time, but I'm not averse to it. I remember the first time someone said, like, what is pineapple on pizza, right? And then curiosity kind of gets to you, and you're like, I really want to taste it. I don't mind it. I find it a little fun. I can't have it all the time, which is why I was like, that's the most sacrilegious question for some.
So I have to tell you this. Our brand is called Toppings because the whole idea was that, we have whatever 35, 40 toppings and you build your dream pizza, right? Because there's always that
No
one
pineapple.
thing. And pineapple, like it was a very short-lived part of the conversation. It was a simple no. It didn't make the cut, surprisingly.
Damn it. And my general question always used to be while advertising or die, and it's evolved over time with the guests who kind of come in. For you, I actually want to ask is what do you think our love for trying different kinds of food will never die?
Oh, no one's ever asked me that, but maybe it's FOMO.
That's actually correct. You have given the most crisp and perfect answer to that question. Because it's true, it is FOMO, right? If someone's eating it, it's like the first time someone made me try and eat liver, and I cannot eat that again, but I still ate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Connects back to my pineapple point. See, I'm telling you, FOMO. That's why you eat pineapple. You got to give it. Have you tried it? I would
That's
ask you
the
this before we,
exception to the rule. No, I
before we
haven't.
close this off.
I can't. I just can't.
Try one slice, one
No,
bite.
I
Come
can't.
on, you got
I
to.
can't.
I think that's a perfect way to round this episode off. Thank you so much, Gauri. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. That was fun. No pineapples, but that was fun.
Okay, fine. I'll keep the pineapple pizza for myself, and that's it for this episode of Advertising is Dead.